The air in the opulent lobby of Pinnacle Financial's flagship branch in downtown Chicago hummed with the quiet tension of a morning rush. Customers shuffled in line, their patience thinning, like the last drops of coffee in paper cups. At the center of it all stood Marcus Carter, his tailored navy suit, a silent rebellion against the sterility of the marble floors. His hands steady as a surgeon's, which, incidentally, he was clutched a leather portfolio containing the blueprint for a $1.2 billion investment. Yet the receptionist, a frazzled woman named Lisa, blinked at her screen, with the blank stare of someone who'd just been handed a Rubik's Cube. "I'm sorry, Dr. Carter," she said. "I don't see your appointment." Enter Richard Vaughn, the branch manager, a man whose ruddy complexion suggested a lifetime of simmering just below boiling point. He didn't walk so much as prowl his eyes, locking onto Marcus, like a hawk spotting prey. "Problem here." Vaughn's voice dripped with the kind of faux concern reserved for telemarketers. Marcus kept his tone even. "I have a meeting about an investment opportunity. It might be under Carter Capital." Vaughn didn't bother checking. Instead, he smirked, glancing at the growing line. "Funny how everyone's got a meeting when they don't want to wait." The jab landed, but Marcus didn't flinch. He'd faced sharper scalpels. Then came the performance. Vaughn, accidentally, bumped Marcus's arm, sending his portfolio crashing to the floor. Papers fanned out like a deck of cards, business proposals, stock analyses, the kind of documents that could make or break a bank's quarter. "Oops," Vaughn said, not bothering to lower his voice. "You people always make a mess." The lobby froze. A teller dropped a pen. Marcus knelt, gathering the pages with the precision of someone who'd spent years picking up the pieces of other people's arrogance. As he stood, a security guard materialized, arms crossed. "Sir, we'll need to verify your ID." Marcus handed it over, his jaw set. Vaughn barely glanced at it. "Could be fake," he muttered loud enough for the nearest customers to hear. A woman in a fur coat gasped. What Vaughn didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that Marcus had already texted his assistant. 2 words lighted up. By the time the regional director arrived the next day, he'd find Vaughn polishing his resume instead of his ego. Because Marcus Carter wasn't just another customer. He was the storm Pinnacle Financial never saw coming. And as Marcus took a seat in the waiting area, he allowed himself a small private smile. The plastic chair was uncomfortable. The view of Vaughn sweating through his shirt, priceless. The boardroom's air grew thick enough to choke on as Marcus Carter let Sarah Chen's question hang, "What happened to him?" before answering with a slow, deliberate gesture toward the window. Outside, a crowd had gathered, their signs visible, even from the 30th floor. Pinnacle banking on racism. And equal loans. Yeah, equal opportunity. That, Marcus said quietly, is what happens when you treat people like they don't belong. He tapped his pen against the report. Page 47, gentlemen. The loan denial rate for black-owned businesses in this city is 3 times higher than for white applicants with identical credentials. That's not banking. That's economic warfare. A gray-haired board member, Charles Whitmore III, scoffed. "You're asking us to throw out decades of risk assessment protocols?" "No." Marcus cut in, sliding a single sheet across the table. "I'm showing you how those protocols were rigged." The document, a leaked email chain, revealed executives joking about urban risk factors while approving loans for white clients with bankruptcies. Pierce reached for his water glass, his hand trembling. "We could implement some diversity initiatives, perhaps a—" "No!" Marcus's voice cracked like thunder. "Not initiatives. Overhaul, starting with his resignation." He pointed to Whitmore, whose name appeared throughout the report. "And yours, Franklin. Effective today." The room erupted. Amid the chaos, Sarah Chen stood and walked to Marcus's side of the table. "I'll serve as interim CEO," she announced, stunning the room into silence. "And I move to accept Dr. Coleman's terms in full." A junior board member, the only black woman in the room, raised her hand. "Seconded." Pierce's chair screeched as he stood. "This is mutiny." "No," Marcus corrected, nodding to his attorney, who handed Pierce a resignation template already prepped for printing. This is progress. As the board voted 9-3 to accept his demands, Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Diane. Weber just tried to shred files. Security stopped him. FBI's here. He smiled. Some systems, it seemed, could still self-correct. By noon, Pinnacle's website displayed a new banner under New Management. By market close, its stock had jumped 12% on news of the reforms. And in a quiet corner office, Marcus pinned Diane's grandmother's 1983 rejection letter to the wall next to her new VP nameplate. Justice, he thought, tasted better than any billion-dollar deal. The fluorescent lights in Pinnacle's executive suite flickered like the dying gasps of an old regime as Franklin Pierce paced before his shell-shocked leadership team. "We'll form an implementation task force," he declared, clutching at straws. "Phase the changes over 18 months. Sarah Chen's tablet slammed onto the conference table, displaying a live Twitter feed. "Pinnacle discrimination is trending nationwide," she said coldly. "We don't have 18 hours. Down in the lobby, Weber was being escorted out by security, his cardboard box of belongings topped with the golf trophies he'd won with the very executives who'd now thrown him under the bus. A reporter shoved a microphone in his face. "Mr. Weber, care to comment on the FBI investigation into discriminatory lending practices?" His stunned silence was captured in a photo that would grace the Wall Street Journal's front page. Meanwhile, Marcus stood before a floor-to-ceiling window in his penthouse, watching the city lights blink to life. His phone buzzed. Janet, his CFO. 37% ownership secured. The board can't touch us now. A knock at the door revealed Reverend Michaels and two community organizers. "Alex," the Reverend said, gripping his hand, "we've got 70 volunteers ready to fan out to every Pinnacle branch tomorrow. They'll help customers file complaints if there's any resistance to your new policies." Marcus smiled. "Perfect, because at 9 a.m. sharp." He tapped his remote, illuminating a TV screen showing Pinnacle's logo being redesigned in real time by his digital team. The new motto beneath it read, "Banking for All." Back at Pinnacle, Pierce stared helplessly as his monitor displayed a breaking news alert. Carter Capital announces partnership with Treasury Department on Fair Lending Initiative. The accompanying photo showed Marcus shaking hands with the deputy secretary, using Pinnacle's own lobby as the backdrop. Sarah Chen quietly placed her keycard on Pierce's desk. "My resignation, effective immediately." She nodded to the TV. "I've accepted Dr. Coleman's offer to lead the reform task force." As Pierce sputtered, the elevator doors opened to reveal a team of federal regulators. "Mr. Pierce, we have some questions about your 2018 loan approval metrics." The revolution wouldn't be televised. It would be live-streamed, tweeted, and permanently etched into financial history. And for the first time in Pinnacle's existence, its ATMs would dispense something revolutionary: justice. The press conference microphones caught every nervous shuffle of Pierce's Italian loafers as Marcus Carter stood unwavering at the podium. A CNN reporter raised her hand. "Dr. Carter, is it true you've acquired 39% of Pinnacle's shares?" Before Marcus could answer, Sarah Chen stepped forward, her new CEO pin glinting under the lights. "Actually," she said, "as of 8:59 this morning, it's 42%. And every share was purchased to fund these reforms." The crowd erupted. Somewhere in the audience, Diane, now VP of Community Relations, smiled as she handed out folders to reporters. Inside were copies of Pinnacle's new loan approval rates, already showing a 22% increase for minority applicants in the past 48 hours. Meanwhile, Thomas Weber sat frozen in HR, staring at two unexpected guests, an FBI agent and Marcus's lead investigator. "Mr. Weber," the agent said, sliding a warrant across the table, "we'd like to discuss your communications with First National Bank about high-risk customers." Weber's phone chose that moment to ping with a notification his personal bank accounts had just been frozen. Back at the press conference, Reverend Michaels took the mic. "Today isn't just about one bank," he boomed. "It's about every teller window, every loan office, every place where people are judged by their skin instead of their character. The civil rights leaders behind him held up signs with a toll-free number, 1-800-REPORT RACISM. Pierce, sweating through his collar, leaned toward Marcus. "For God's sake, can't we at least keep the FBI investigation quiet until—" "Transparency, Franklin." Marcus reminded him loud enough for the mics to catch. "Unless you'd prefer I announce your resignation right now." The room fell silent as Pierce's face crumpled. Then, with perfect timing, Marcus's phone buzzed a text from Janet. "Treasury just approved our fair lending partnership. They're using Pinnacle as the national model." He turned back to the reporters. "One more announcement." Outside, Pinnacle's massive digital sign flickered, then changed in real time. The old slogan, "Your trusted partner," dissolved into bold new letters. "Your money, your dignity, our promise." And for the first time in banking history, a standing ovation erupted in a press conference about loan approvals. The financial world held its breath as Marcus Carter's revolution at Pinnacle Financial sent shockwaves through Wall Street. CNBC's ticker flashed a surreal headline. "Pinnacle stock soars 18% as equity banking. Model attracts 2 Bs in new deposits." In a packed conference room, Diane, now sporting a Diversity and Inclusion Director name tag, unveiled Pinnacle's first transparency dashboard. Every loan decision, every wait time, every customer interaction is now publicly tracked by demographic. She announced, clicking to reveal real-time approval rates glowing on massive screens. A gasp rippled through the crowd as the data showed Black small business loan approvals had jumped from 32% to 68% in 3 weeks. Meanwhile, Weber's wrongful termination lawsuit backfired spectacularly when Discovery unearthed his personal emails, including one where he'd bragged about keeping the riffraff out of premium services. The judge dismissed his case with prejudice, ordering him to pay Pinnacle's legal fees. Marcus watched the fallout from his new corner office at Pinnacle Tower, where a framed rejection letter from 1985 hung beside today's approval notice, both for the same family business now thriving. His phone buzzed with a text from Reverend Michaels. "J.P. Morgan just called. They want your playbook." Sarah Chen burst in, waving a report. "You won't believe this, our underserved neighborhoods are now our fastest-growing markets." She flipped to a page showing 900 Mellers in new deposits from communities Pinnacle had previously redlined. Down in the lobby, a line stretched around the block, not of protesters, but new customers. A grandmother who'd been denied a mortgage in 1992 held up her brand-new account agreement for the cameras, tears glistening. "Today," she said, "I'm banking on change." And in a quiet federal office, the Treasury Secretary signed an unprecedented order. All banks receiving government contracts would adopt the Pinnacle protocols. The revolution wouldn't just be televised. It would be FDIC insured. The courtroom air turned electric as Weber's own words, "high-value clients receive premium service," hung over the proceedings like a noose. Judge Morrison's pen froze mid-note, her sharp gaze locking onto the flustered banker. Marcus's attorney didn't miss a beat. "Your Honor, may we play Exhibit 42? The screen behind the judge flickered to life, showing security footage of Weber personally escorting a white hedge fund manager with multiple fraud convictions straight to the VIP lounge. The timestamp: the same hour he'd demanded Marcus empty his pockets. A juror audibly gasped. Weber's attorney scrambled. "Objection relevance." "Overruled," Judge Morrison snapped. The plaintiff opened this line of questioning. Diane, now coolly professional in a steel gray suit, delivered the coup de grace. She tapped her tablet, and Weber's own voice boomed through the courtroom speakers. "You know the type. Urban risk factors. Riffraff." The recordings made during his training sessions sent reporters scrambling for the exits to file updates. Weber lunged up from his seat. "Those were private and illegal." Marcus's attorney countered, sliding a notarized consent form across the bench. "Every employee signed these acknowledging calls may be recorded for quality assurance." The judge didn't even wait for closing arguments. "Mr. Weber," she said, removing her glasses, "you haven't been defamed. You've been documented. Case dismissed with prejudice." As the gavel crashed, Marcus's phone lit up with a text from Sarah Chen. Feds just raided Weber's home. Found loan files he stole to build his defense. Outside the courthouse, Reverend Michael stood before a sea of cameras. Today wasn't just about one racist banker. He declared, holding up Pinnacle's new equity dashboard on a giant screen. It's about every institution that's still pretending racism is just bad apples. The data doesn't lie. That evening, as MSNBC played Weber's perp walk on loop, Marcus received an unexpected call at the White House. Could he advise on new banking equity legislation? Some victories he thought watching the Sunset Guild Chicago's skyline were sweeter than others. And this one, it came with receipts. The glass doors of Pinnacle's flagship branch gleamed under a bold, new marquee. Community Banking Center, where your worth isn't judged by your wallet. Inside, the transformation was palpable, tellers of every background assisting customers in 6 languages, while real-time equity metrics flashed on digital displays. Marcus Carter stood before the Federal Reserve Banking Committee, holding up Pinnacle's latest report. These numbers prove what we've always known, he declared, clicking to a slide showing identical loan approval rates across racial lines for the first time in the bank's history. When you remove bias, you don't lose profits, you gain trust, a conservative senator scoffed. Dr. Carter, isn't this just social engineering disguised as banking? Before Marcus could respond, Sarah Chen, now Pinnacle's youngest ever EVP, leaned into her microphone. Senator, our investors call it market expansion. We've added 400,000 new accounts in communities your district banks redlined for decades. The room erupted in applause. Meanwhile, in an unexpected twist, Thomas Weber had become an unlikely advocate, volunteering with the very community organizations Marcus had connected him to. When a local news crew caught him coaching teens on financial literacy in Englewood, the clip went viral with the caption, "Redemption looks good on you." Back at Pinnacle Tower, Diane presided over the grand opening of the new Fair Lending Center, where a mural spanned the entire wall, a collage of every customer who'd been wronged now holding their hard-won loan approvals. At the center, her grandmother's photo, beaming beside her 1983 rejection letter and 2023 small business loan check. As Marcus scrolled through Pinnacle's soaring stock price on his phone, an alert popped up. Treasury Dept. Announces Carter Protocols will be national banking standard. Some revolutions, he mused, didn't just change institutions. They changed history. And this one was just getting started. Diane's eyes lit up as she gestured toward the bustling lobby. See that? She pointed to an elderly black woman in a vibrant head wrap being helped by a young white teller. Mrs. Johnson couldn't get a $500 loan here 3 years ago. Last month, we approved her for $50,000 to expand her catering business. As if on cue, Mrs. Johnson spotted them and rushed over, enveloping Marcus in a hug that smelled of cinnamon and defiance. "Baby, look what you did." She thrust her deposit slip at him, $8,000 in opening day revenue. The moment was interrupted by a commotion at the entrance. A group of bankers from rival institutions, easily identifiable by their stiff suits and hesitant expressions, had arrived for what Diane called their field trips. "They come twice a month," she whispered, "trying to understand how we turned those neighborhoods into our most loyal customers." Marcus's phone buzzed with an alert. First National Bank settles DOJ lending discrimination case for $200, adopts Pinnacle protocols. Upstairs in the boardroom, Sarah Chen was mid-presentation when Marcus entered. The screen displayed a stunning graph. Pinnacle's community lending portfolio, once their riskiest segment, now boasted the lowest default rates. "Turns out," Sarah quipped, "when you actually invest in people, instead of profiling them, they tend to succeed." That evening at the Financial Equity Gala, Marcus found himself face-to-face with Weber. The former banker now wore a simple nonprofit badge, instead of his old Pinnacle pin. There was an awkward pause before Weber extended his hand. "I heard about Mrs. Johnson," he said quietly. "Never would have happened under my watch." Marcus shook his hand firmly. "That's the point, Tom. It should have." As the orchestra swelled, Reverend Michaels took the stage to announce the Coleman Equity Index, a new national benchmark, tying executive bonuses to verifiable diversity metrics. The room erupted. Bankers scrambled to take pictures of the criteria. Later, as fireworks painted the skyline, Marcus stood alone on the balcony. His phone displayed one final notification: FDIC approves groundbreaking merger. Carter Capital and Pinnacle Financial to form largest community-focused bank in U.S. history. Some revolutions started with a confrontation. This one ended with an embrace. And a banking system that finally understood the real risk wasn't lending to marginalized communities. It was not lending to them. The conference room buzzed with energy as Marcus Carter surveyed the group of young entrepreneurs, formerly unbankable, now Pinnacle's most promising clients. Among them sat Jamal, the former teller who'd risked his job to expose Weber, now proudly displaying the logo of his own fintech startup. "Your loan committee approved all 7 applications," Marcus announced, sliding envelopes across the table. A woman in a vibrant headscarf gasped as she opened hers $250,000 for her sustainable textile company. This changes everything," she whispered. The moment was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Thomas Weber stood in the doorway, holding a stack of financial literacy workbooks. "Sorry I'm late," he said quietly, setting them down. "Had to pick up materials for tomorrow's class at the detention center." The room fell silent. Then Jamal stood and extended his hand. "Good to see you, Mr. Weber." The simple act of grace made Marcus's throat tighten. Later, as twilight painted Chicago in gold, Marcus found Weber lingering outside. "You've come a long way," Marcus offered. Weber stared at his scuffed shoes, a far cry from his once polished Oxfords. "Not far enough, but I'm trying." He pulled out a worn photo, a black teenager he'd denied a student account years ago. "Tracking him down to make amends is my next project." The confession hung between them until Marcus's phone buzzed with a seismic alert. Congress approves Coleman Act, mandates equity lending nationwide. As fireworks exploded over the river, Weber turned to Marcus with tears in his eyes. "You could have destroyed me. Instead—" He gestured to the entrepreneurs celebrating inside. Marcus shook his head. "Justice was never about you, Tom. It was about them." Inside, Jamal raised a glass. "To second chances for people and banks." The toast echoed through the room as Marcus watched Weber disappear into the night, not as a villain, not as a hero, but as proof that even the most broken systems could heal. And in that moment, the revolution felt complete. Not with a battle cry, but with a bank statement showing $8 million in small business loans, every single one to entrepreneurs who'd once been turned away. The real profit, it turned out, wasn't in exclusion. It was in saying yes. The young tech entrepreneur's hands trembled as she tapped her prototype app, one that would connect minority-owned businesses with ethical lenders. Marcus leaned forward, recognizing the spark in her eyes. "This is brilliant," he said. "But tell me, what kept you from pitching this sooner?" Her answer cut deep. "I tried. 3 banks said my demographic didn't understand technology." A murmur rippled through the room. Then, Marcus did something unexpected. He pulled out his phone and dialed live on speaker. "Sarah, let's create a $10 million innovation fund specifically for underestimated founders like these." The room erupted in cheers as Sarah's voice came through, already drafting the proposal. Later, as the meeting wrapped, the entrepreneur approached Marcus with tears in her eyes. "You didn't just open a door today," she said. "You showed us how to build our own damn buildings." Outside, the Chicago skyline glittered with possibility. Marcus's phone buzzed a text from Weber. "Found that kid I turned away. Helping him launch a food truck next month. Call it Second Chance Eats." The revolution wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And sometimes, that tasted even sweeter than victory. The lobby's polished floors reflected the tension like a funhouse mirror, every glare, every dismissive glance amplified. Marcus Carter watched as Richard Vaughn practically tripped over himself to assist an elderly white couple, his voice dripping with a sweetness reserved for VIPs. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, so lovely to see you. Let's get you taken care of right away." The contrast was almost comical. Meanwhile, Marcus's third attempt to inquire about his missed appointment was met with a sigh as if he were a child asking for candy before dinner. His phone buzzed again. Franklin Pierce, CEO. Marcus silenced it. Let them sweat. By the time the clock ticked past noon, the lobby had thinned, but Vaughn's hostility hadn't. Marcus approached the desk once more, his tone still calm, though his knuckles whitened around his portfolio. 3 hours, he said, and not a single update. Is this how Pinnacle treats all its clients, or just the ones you assume don't belong? Vaughn didn't even look up. Like I said, sir, he sneered. Your kind always expects special treatment. A new face entered the scene, a young black teller named Jamal, who'd been silently observing the spectacle. His fingers hovered over his keyboard, torn between professionalism and the urge to intervene. Then, Vaughn crossed a line. Maybe try the credit union on 5th, he said, leaning in just enough for Marcus to catch the venom. They're used to your situation. Jamal's chair screeched as he stood abruptly. Mr. Vaughn, I can... Sit down, Jamal, Vaughn snapped. Unless you want to join him outside. The air thickened. Marcus's phone buzzed once more, but this time he answered. Pierce, he said loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. Funny you should call. I've been enjoying Pinnacle's hospitality all morning. A beat of silence. Then, deliberately, No. Your branch manager has been exceptionally helpful. Upstairs, Pierce's face drained of color. What do you mean he's still in the lobby? Back at the desk, Vaughn's smirk faltered as Marcus slid his phone across the counter. Pierce's voice booming through the speaker. Richard Vaughn, you incompetent! But Marcus didn't wait for the fireworks. He turned to Jamal, handing him a crisp business card. Call me if you're ever looking for a workplace that values integrity. Then, with a final glance at Vaughn, he added loud enough for the gawking customers to hear, Oh, and Richard, pack your desk. The real shareholders are about to clean house. The elevator doors dinged open just as Vaughn's name tag hit the floor. The blinking hold light on Vaughn's phone seemed to mock the entire scene, its rhythmic pulse syncing with Marcus Carter's steadying breath. Vaughn leaned in close enough for Marcus to smell the stale coffee on his breath. Empty your pockets, he demanded loud enough for the lingering lunchtime crowd to hear. Let's see what kind of evidence you're really carrying. Marcus didn't flinch. You've seen my ID. You've ignored my appointment. Now you want to play TSA? A nervous titter rippled through the onlookers. Just then, Jamal, the young teller Vaughn had earlier silenced, slammed his drawer shut and strode over a file in hand. Mr. Vaughn, he said, voice trembling but clear, I pulled the Coleman Ventures file from the system. The appointment's right here, scheduled at 9:30. Under Carter Capital, just like he said. He thrust the paper forward like a shield. Vaughn's face twisted. Since when do you... The elevator doors chimed, cutting him off. Sarah Chen, Pinnacle's VP of Acquisitions, burst into the lobby, her heels clicking a frantic staccato. Her eyes locked onto Marcus, then darted to Vaughn, still looming over him. The pieces clicked. Her gasp was audible. Richard, what in God's name are you doing? Her voice sliced through the tension. This is Dr. Marcus Carter, our primary investor. Vaughn's laugh was brittle. Oh, come on, Sarah. You expect me to believe this man? Enough. The word came not from Sarah, but from the elderly white woman who'd earlier defended Marcus. She stepped forward, her pearl necklace quivering with outrage. I've banked here for 40 years, Richard, and today I'm ashamed. She turned to Marcus, her voice softening. Doctor, if you'll allow me, I'd like to introduce you to my son-in-law. He's the new regional director. Vaughn's face went slack. Marcus finally smiled a cold, razor-sharp thing. He plucked his license from the counter and slid it into his pocket. Then, nodding to Jamal, he said, You've got a good eye. Ever consider working in venture capital? As Sarah rushed to apologize, Marcus held up a hand. Save it. I'll be taking my business and my billion elsewhere. He turned to leave, then paused, glancing back at Vaughn. Oh, and Richard. When the FDIC investigators ask why Pinnacle collapsed, tell them it was your kind of customer service. The lobby erupted into murmurs. Vaughn's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The only voice left was the hold line's automated reminder. Your call is very important to us. Marcus didn't look back. The door slid shut behind him, sealing Pinnacle's fate with a whisper. The Mercedes glided through Chicago's financial district, its tinted windows shielding Marcus Carter from the world outside. His reflection in the glass showed a man composed, but beneath the surface, his mind raced like the city's stock ticker. Michael, his driver of 10 years, kept stealing glances in the rearview mirror. Doc, you want me to pull over? Get some air. Marcus shook his head. Keep driving. His thumb hovered over his phone screen, then decisively tapped a contact labeled Watershed Team. The line connected instantly. Janet, he said, his voice steady now. Add the Chicago Tribune's financial editor to the meeting, and reach out to Jamal Reynolds, the teller from Pinnacle. Offer him a consultant's fee to testify. A block away, Pinnacle's headquarters buzzed with panic. Franklin Pierce's video call with Vaughn was a masterclass in corporate damage control gone wrong. Vaughn, still sweating in his office, tried to deflect. Sir, with all due respect, the man never showed proper identification. Enough! Pierce's roar silenced the room. You accused a billionaire neurosurgeon of fraud in front of half of downtown Chicago. Do you have any idea what you've done? Sarah Chen, standing stiffly by the window, interjected quietly. It's worse, Franklin. Jamal just resigned. Live tweeted the whole thing. It's trending. She turned her tablet around. The screen displayed a hashtag Pinnacle Prejudice. Back in the car, Marcus's phone lit up with a call from an unlisted number. He let it ring 3 times before answering. Pierce, he said coolly. Marcus, Dr. Carter. I can't begin to apologize enough. Pierce stammered. We're terminating Vaughn immediately and... Franklin. Marcus, cut in. You don't fire a weed by trimming the leaves. You pull it up by the roots. He paused, watching the city blur past. I'll be shorting Pinnacle's stock within the hour. My legal team is drafting a discrimination suit. And the SEC. They'll be very interested in your security protocols. The line went dead. Pierce's hand shook as he hung up. Across the room, the bank's general counsel groaned. Sir Bloomberg just picked up Jamal's thread. Our shares are down 8% in pre-market trading. Meanwhile, Marcus finally allowed himself to exhale. He tapped a new number, this one, for a rival bank's CEO. Greg, it's Carter. Let's discuss that merger you proposed last quarter. I'm suddenly available. As the Mercedes turned onto Lakeshore Drive, the morning sun glinted off Pinnacle's towering logo, a symbol now teetering on the edge of ruin. Marcus allowed himself a small grim smile. Some lessons, it seemed, could only be taught in billions. The conference room in Marcus Carter's downtown office hummed with quiet intensity. His legal team had just finished dissecting Pinnacle's bylaws when Janet, his CFO, slid a tablet across the table. We've hit 18% ownership, she said. Another few days and we'll cross the 20% threshold. Marcus studied the numbers, then glanced at the investigator's report, page after page of damning testimony from Pinnacle employees and customers. One account stood out: a single mother denied a loan, despite perfect credit, while a white businessman with half her score was approved minutes later. His jaw tightened. Phase 2 starts today. Leak the first 3 cases to the Wall Street Journal anonymously. Let's see how Pinnacle handles the spotlight. Across town, Franklin Pierce was drowning in damage control. The bank's PR team scrambled as reporters bombarded them with questions about the discrimination allegations. We're investigating internally, Pierce insisted during a tense press conference, but the crowd wasn't buying it. A journalist in the front row held up her phone, displaying a viral video of Vaughn sneering at a black customer. Is this part of your internal investigation, Mr. Pierce? Back in Marcus's office, An unexpected visitor arrived: Jamal Reynolds, the former Pinnacle teller. He carried a thumb drive. Every discriminatory transaction from the past 6 months, Jamal said, his voice low. Vaughn had us code them as high risk to justify denials. I kept backups. Marcus clasped his shoulder. You just handed us phase 3. That evening, as Pinnacle's stock plummeted another 12%, Marcus made his final move. He dialed Pierce directly. Franklin, he said, you have 2 choices. Resign and let the board appoint someone who will dismantle this toxic culture, or watch me buy the bank out from under you and do it myself. The line went silent for a long moment. Then Pierce exhaled. What are your terms? First, Vaughn testifies publicly about Pinnacle's systemic bias. Second, Jamal Reynolds becomes VP of Community Relations. Third, Marcus paused, watching the city lights flicker to life outside his window. You fund financial literacy programs in every neighborhood your branches redlined. The next morning, Pinnacle's board called an emergency meeting. By noon, Pierce was out. By closing bell, Marcus's team owned 28%, and the New York Times was breaking the story of corporate America's quietest, most devastating takeover. Some victories, Marcus thought as he signed the final paperwork, weren't measured in billions. They were measured in change. The morning sun streamed through the blinds of Marcus Carter's office as he pored over the latest whistleblower documents, each page more damning than the last. A knock interrupted him. Gabrielle Torres entered holding a sealed envelope. You'll want to see this, she said. From a Pinnacle HR manager. Weber's had 7 formal complaints in 5 years, all buried. Marcus unfolded a termination notice for the employee who'd reported Weber last year. The reason? Violating confidentiality. His phone buzzed with a notification: Pinnacle's board was holding an emergency call in 15 minutes. He tapped his earpiece to listen live. At Pinnacle headquarters, Pierce was mid-rant. Need to spin this before the shareholder meeting. A board member cut in. Franklin, we can't spin systemic racism. The Times already has the documents. Marcus muted the feed and turned to Torres. Draft the lawsuit. Include every victim from those files, especially the fired whistleblower. Meanwhile, at the branch, Weber was coaching the new teller, Maya Lopez. See that guy? He nodded toward a black businessman entering the lobby. Watch how he hovers near the premium clients, probably casing accounts. Maya's eyes widened. But he's just checking his phone. Weber's reply was cut off by gasps. Every computer screen in the branch suddenly flashed red, then displayed 2 words in bold white letters: access denied. The security system had locked them all out, including Weber's admin privileges. Maya's personal phone chimed. A news alert. Breaking: activist investor Marcus Carter now owns 28% of Pinnacle Financial. Sources say he's demanding immediate leadership changes. Weber's face went sheet white. His own phone rang Pierce's number. He answered with a shaky, "Sir." "Clean out your desk," Pierce hissed. "The board just voted. You're done. We're done." As Weber stood frozen, Maya quietly slipped a business card from her pocket, the one Jamal had given her last week. "When you're ready to work somewhere that values integrity." It read with a number for Carter Capital's HR department. Across town, Marcus watched Pinnacle's stock nosedive in real time. Torres handed him a pen. Ready to make history. He signed the lawsuit with a flourish, just as his phone lit up. Pierce finally calling him for once. Marcus let it go to voicemail. Some calls, like some battles, were better won in silence. The next morning, the Wall Street Journal's headline said it all: How One Man's Humiliation Became a Bank's Reckoning and a Blueprint for Change. Below it, a photo of Marcus shaking hands with Pinnacle's new CEO, Gabrielle Torres. The coffee shop's espresso machine hissed like a warning as Marcus Carter studied Diane, the nervous Pinnacle receptionist, who'd just handed him a smoking gun. Her fingers still trembled around her latte, but her voice didn't waver. "There's something else," she said, leaning in. "Weber's been tipping off his golf buddy at First National about our black clients with high balances. They get poached with better rates the next day." Marcus's jaw tightened. That wasn't just racism. It was corporate espionage. He slid an envelope across the table. Your severance paperwork. Signed and dated for today. Walk back in there, hand it to Weber, and tell him you're joining Coleman Ventures. A flicker of triumph crossed Diane's face as she pocketed it. Meanwhile, Weber's enhanced security protocols were backfiring spectacularly. A prominent civil rights attorney, one of Marcus's investigators, had just been asked for 3 forms of ID to deposit a check. The entire interaction was now trending on Twitter with banking while black. Upstairs in Pinnacle's executive suite, Sarah Chen stared at her screen in horror. Her deep dive into Marcus's background had uncovered his most devastating weapon. He'd quietly funded 11 successful discrimination lawsuits against major banks over the past decade. Each one had ended with sweeping policy changes and executive purges. Her phone rang. It was Jamal, the former teller. Sarah, you might want to check the SEC filings. Carter Capital just crossed 30% ownership. The blood drained from her face. That triggered a mandatory takeover clause. She sprinted to Pierce's office where the CEO was mid-argument with the board chairman. Can't just roll over for some activist investor, Pierce shouted. Actually, Sarah interrupted, throwing the SEC filing on his desk. He's not an activist anymore. He's the majority shareholder. The room went silent. On the street below, news vans swarmed Pinnacle's entrance. Diane's resignation had gone viral, along with her grandmother's loan rejection letter from 1983. The bank's stock was in freefall. Marcus watched it all unfold from his penthouse sipping bourbon as the sunset painted Chicago gold. His phone lit up with a text from Gabrielle Torres. Class action filed. We have 37 plaintiffs and counting. He replied with one word, proceed. Somewhere across town, Richard Vaughn sat in his empty apartment staring at a termination letter and the first of many subpoenas. The game was over. The reckoning had begun. And for the first time in Pinnacle's 120-year history, change wasn't coming. It had already arrived. The boardroom lights in Marcus Carter's downtown office hummed with tension as his legal team made final adjustments to their presentation. Janet, his CFO, slid a final document across the table, a list of every Pinnacle executive who'd approved Vaughn's promotions despite the buried complaints. Marcus circled 3 names at the top, all still on the board. These men don't leave with golden parachutes, he said quietly. They leave in handcuffs. Across town, Pinnacle's war room buzzed with misplaced confidence. Pierce adjusted his tie before the polished mahogany table. Remember, we control the narrative. If this mystery investor wants a fight, we'll... The doors burst open. Sarah Chen stood breathless, her tablet displaying breaking news. Carter Capital announces 31% stake in Pinnacle Financial. Below the headline was Marcus's official statement and a damning video clip of Vaughn's high-risk profiles comment playing on loop. Pierce's coffee cup shattered on the floor. At precisely 8:58 a.m., Marcus stepped off the elevator into Pinnacle's headquarters, Diane and Jamal flanking him like honor guards. The receptionist gasped. This was the man they'd turned away 2 weeks prior. As the boardroom doors opened, every head swiveled to the stranger in their midst, until Sarah Chen stood and pulled out the chair at the table's head. Gentlemen, Marcus said, dropping his dossier with a thunderous slap. Let's discuss what real shareholder value looks like. He nodded to Jamal, who dimmed the lights as the first slide appeared, a graph showing Pinnacle's $900 million loss in minority customer deposits since 2015. Phase 1 accountability. Pierce lunged for his phone. I'm calling our lawyers. You'll want to save that call. Marcus interrupted, tossing him a subpoena. The DOJ just opened an investigation into your lending practices. My gift to you. As chaos erupted, Sarah quietly slid a folder to Marcus, the bank's secret list of undesirable zip codes for loans. He smiled. Phase 2 had begun. By noon, Pinnacle's website displayed a new banner under new leadership. By market close, its stock had surged 17% on news of Marcus's overhaul plan. And, in a quiet corner office, Diane answered her new work phone. Coleman Ventures Diversity Initiatives. How can I help? Some victories, Marcus thought, watching the sunset glint off Pinnacle's rebuilt logo, tasted sweeter than others. The mahogany table reflected Marcus Carter's steely gaze as 12 stunned board members struggled to process his entrance. Pierce's notes slipped from his fingers, fluttering to the floor like surrendering white flags. "Dr. Coleman." He stammered, his defensive presentation suddenly worthless. Marcus didn't sit. He circled the room like a panther, his gold cufflinks catching the light with every step. "Gentlemen," he said, pausing to tap the nameplate of a board member who'd approved Vaughn's promotions. "You've been preparing for a hostile takeover. What you're getting is a hostile awakening." Sarah Chen stood abruptly, her chair screeching. "I can confirm Dr. Coleman owns 31% of Pinnacle's shares." She slid a tablet toward Pierce, showing the SEC filing and the viral video of Weber's high-risk profiles comment, now with 10 million views. The chief legal counsel lunged for his briefcase. "We'll need to adjourn to review." "No." Marcus's voice cracked like a whip. He nodded to his attorney, who distributed black binders. Page 3 details how your discretionary lending policies illegally redlined 6 Chicago neighborhoods. Page 12 shows 3 executives. He pointed to ashen-faced men at the table, personally approving discriminatory loan denials. A board member slammed his fist. "This is blackmail." "This," Marcus countered, flipping to a photo of Diane's grandmother's rejected loan application from 1983, "is justice." He turned to Pierce. "You have 1 hour to accept my terms: Weber's immediate termination, a public apology to every documented victim, and the dissolution of this board starting with these 3. His finger landed on each conspirator like a guillotine blade. As chaos erupted, Sarah quietly activated the conference room screen. Live footage showed Reverend Michaels and 50 community leaders holding a press conference outside Pinnacle's headquarters, flanked by reporters from every major network. Pierce's phone buzzed, the Treasury Department calling. Again, Marcus adjusted his cuffs. "Clock's ticking, Franklin. The DOJ wants answers. Your shareholders want blood. And He smiled. "I just want a front-row seat when you explain to America why your operational autonomy included institutional racism." Somewhere in the building, Weber's security badge deactivated mid-sneer. The revolution wouldn't be televised. It would be live-streamed.